Welcome everyone. My name is Corinne Kessel and CSEP, and I'm one of your ILEA International Board of Governors. I am joined today by Dustin Westling, one of my fellow Board of Governors who will moderate today's forum conversation. I would like to say hello to our incredible lineup of panelists here, Sabrina, Greg, and Khalid. Thank you for being here. Dustin will introduce you in a moment, but welcome. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. On behalf of our entire international leadership team and all of our local chapters, I want to say a huge thank you to all of our amazing members. This community is really powerful, and without dedicated and committed members like you, we cannot produce these kinds of valuable webinars. We are so grateful to be part of this organization with you. And to those on the call who are not yet ILEA members, we welcome you as well. And I encourage you to be in touch with your local ILEA chapter to hear more about why this community will truly change the course of your business and your career. Check out ILEAHub.com for tons of resources and more info. And to everyone, welcome to today's conversation about convention center views. Together with our esteemed panelists, we will explore what these large event venues are currently doing to prepare for safe reopening, or what is working if they're already open to events. We also hope you will gain some valuable insights on what you, as an event professional from any area of the industry, can do to support the safe reopening of events in large venues. We are so excited to share with you that longtime ILEA friends and partners at Giant Enterprises have come on board to sponsor our industry recovery webinars, including today's ILEAFORUM conversation. What this partnership will enable us to do is to ensure we bring you rich, relevant, and useful virtual content throughout the year, specifically focused on empowering you, the events professional, through recovery. So here's a snippet about our amazing partners at the Giants. The Giants Enterprises is dedicated to the curation and development of new ventures complementary to the San Francisco Giants franchise by delivering larger than life experiences to millions at Oracle Park and beyond. Giants Enterprises creates memorable events abundant with excitement and engagement, both virtually and in person, for their varied partners as well as local and international visitors. Positioned at the intersection of sports, entertainment, meetings, events, tourism, and hospitality, Giants Enterprises provides a rare combination of people, experiences, and platforms necessary to create giant impressions. Thank you so much to our friends at Giants Enterprises. Our entire membership and this community is so lucky to have them play a vital role in our industry. So just a little bit of logistics. The chat box is for sharing your thoughts and comments with the audience. The Q&A area is for any questions you want answered, and they will be moderated accordingly. And then promote any questions that you want answered. So anything that you want answered by the panel, please put in the Q&A. The meeting is being recorded and will be shared later on ILEAHub.com. And just to highlight some of our upcoming virtual content, we will have our ILEA keynote webinar this week on Thursday, July 28th. It's 12 p.m. Central by veteran lighting designer and business owner Pierre Marlot of Orange Frog Productions about a newfound research, discovery, and implementation of UVC light to promote safe events, namely how it attacks viruses and reduces airborne risks, the use cases of UVC integration into venues, guest suites, event installations, food service elements, partner supply chains, and so much more. So watch your inbox tomorrow to register for that. And then next week, also next week, we will have ILEA's business and personal coaching series led by certified coach Angela Braun, which is going strong through July. So join us for these live webinar conversations with Angela, sharing everything from why vision matters to the be, do, have model to creating the future you want to create by shifting your mindset. All of these teachings on these webinars are based in science and will give you a new toolkit that is proven to yield big results, especially now. Watch your inbox tomorrow to register for our final Clear Head Strong Mind webinar of the summer on July 30th called The Power of Habits. With all that being said, let's jump into today's conversation. Thank you again to Giants Enterprises for supporting our virtual event series and enabling us to empower you, our members, and our community with tools and insights for industry recovery. Over to you, Dustin.
Awesome. Now that we got all the commercials out of the way, we can get the webinar started. This is great. Thank you for everybody that's joining us. Thank you to our panelists. I'm going to introduce you guys one at a time, and I'm going to have you just answer a quick question about, tell me a little bit about your venue and a little bit about what stage of reopening your city is in. So I'm going to start with Sabrina Anico, Director of Marketing and External Relations at Miami Beach Convention Center. What is going on in Miami, Sabrina?
Thank you so much, Dustin. I'm really excited to be a part of today's panel, and I'm really excited to share experiences from the Miami Beach Convention Center. The MBCC, it's a city-owned facility, and it's privately managed by Spectra Venue Management. After COVID, we convened a task force that was comprised of service providers, GSCs, clients. We conducted a ton of research and really pulled together our own recovery plan for the center. Key to our recovery plan is pursuing the GBAC facility accreditation. It's a program you may have heard about before that was developed by the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. GBAC supports the development and implementation of SOPs, these types of protocols that mitigate the risks of all types of infectious transmissions. It's a really deep dive, intensive 20-point, 150-page assessment about cleaning and disinfection, preventative practices, staff training. But a little more unique to Miami Beach is the MB Standard program that was developed by the city of Miami Beach. They asked businesses to conduct not only health and temperature checks, but ongoing COVID testing of employees, and then implement robust contact tracing procedures. Having ongoing testing in place and a restoration process, this helps us create like a safety bubble or sort of a safety network within our team at the convention center. We haven't opened for mass gatherings yet. Miami-Dade County is still in a yellow flag phase or an augmented phase 2. So, but yellow flag is what they use here as the guiding principle. So it allows for like the limited opening of non-essential businesses, but you have to have social distancing, you have to have capacity limitations, you have to have your face mask on. Since April 21st, the MBCC was housed an alternate care facility, which people describe it as a field hospital. This was a partnership between the state of Florida and the city of Miami Beach, and it was deployed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And they worked with some local GSCs to build this really intensive unit at the convention center. Thankfully, we haven't seen one patient yet. It's basically a preventative measure that's put in place to safeguard against like hospital overflow throughout the entirety of the county. In addition, on the west side of the building, right along the Convention Center Drive, we have a state-sponsored hybrid testing facility. Hybrid is walk up and test and drive up, so it's not green. and an antibody testing site that we're also housing together. So the site overall has been really active during this time. We're anticipating that our next event, if everything continues going well, is going to be JIS, the Jewelry International Show. It takes place in mid-October, and it's like the second largest jewelry show in the Americas, mounted by Reed Exhibitions. It's tough to synthesize city, county, state, client, vendor, corporate expectations, but our team has really risen to this challenge, and you know, we're excited to look towards our reopening and exploring the new normal with live events.
Awesome, Sabrina, thanks for that. It sounds like your facility is a real staple in the community with all of everything that you've had to set up as a precaution. That sounds really amazing. All right, I'm going to move on to Khalid Hamad, sorry, Halamid, sorry, I knew I was going to mess that up. I was saying it in my head. Khalid is the Senior Vice President of DXB Live, the Dubai World Trade Center. He's also the President-elect for ILEA Middle East. Welcome here, Khalid. It's so great to have you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Dubai World Trade Center and generally what's going on in Dubai these days?
Yeah, so thank you. Just allow me to thank all the first-line staff and front-line staff who are working and putting their life at risk to make sure we are safe across the globe. Actually, we really appreciate all their efforts. I mean, in Dubai, the situation is a little bit different. So the city reacted. I mean, we're very proactive as a city to react against COVID more than at the exhibition center. I mean, if you look at Dubai, the World Trade Center, we are an exhibition venue, and we we are an organizer at the same time, so we have our own shows and we have our in-house services division. So we've been greatly impacted, you know, with the COVID when so everything went ground zero when the pandemic hit. With regards to the city, yes, they've conducted a lot of initiatives. So the government kept testing people for COVID. I'm sure in 2 months' time, half of the population will be tested. Actually, all people who comes from abroad, they are tested at the airport before they arrive into city. So with regards to the testing, maybe at the venue we do not test much. However, in the city, at the city level, yes, I mean there is a lot of testing, and I think this worked well for us. Yeah. When the pandemic hit, we thought our first event will be in September. So we were all, and that was the most optimistic view. Yeah. So when even I've been questioned, I said I think the first event will be September. However, last week we had our first event and we had around 1,000 attendees to the events, and it was good because people were worried that maybe we as an organizer and a venue will be putting a show just because we would like to put a show, and there will be no visitor. I mean, you can't imagine. We had to close the registration and we had to stop people from coming in because of overcrowd. And it was a conference exhibition related to AI actually. Happened. So I think the city initiatives worked for and when we look at the city, yes, it's under control. With regards to the venue, we made sure continuous sanitization exercise going on, thermal scanning of people while they're coming in, just to make sure that the temperature is good and the flow. I mean, it helped us also because we are the organizer, so we made sure the flow is continuously considering social distancing among the visitors. We being it at the seating, at the registration, at the foyer, when they queue up to go to their car park. So all the journey, all the visitor journey, we made sure that social distancing is maintained. And with regard to here in Dubai, wearing PPE, which is basically a face mask, is mandatory. Yeah? So even if you are driving a car and you are two in a car, you need to wear mask, which helps a lot also. And I think the visitors at the venue, all of them, they should be wearing PPE. The staff who are interacting with visitors, some of them, especially on the food and beverage area, they even wear a shield, a transparent shield. So we've taken a protective measure, mainly related to social distancing, wearing PPE, and sanitization.
That's awesome.
And we've taken the view also of the visitors after they left the events that we had, and I think all of them, they felt comfortable, and they reach a stage here, you know, if they arrive to a venue and they see these measures are not taken, they will be worried and they might walk back. And we made sure also we don't bother them. So when we check people's temperature, it's all about in a format of using thermal imaging and a thermal camera actually. So it's very, very, very seamless from that perspective.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. I've actually had the opportunity to see your venue in Dubai. It truly is a spectacular place. So thank you again for being here. Next up, Greg Newton, General Manager of the BMO Center at the Calgary Stampede here in my hometown, Calgary, Alberta. Welcome here, Greg. Great to see you. Tell us a little bit about what is going on in Calgary and the Stampede BMO Center specifically.
Thanks, Dustin, and thanks to ILEA for this opportunity. I think it's amazing. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world listening. I appreciate everyone listening in today. Not unlike other destinations, the city of Calgary has been down since mid-March. No events coming in, and it's been a significant impact on our venue and every venue across the country of Canada. When we look at the safety protocols that we're looking at as we look forward to relaunching our venues, we've been working collaboratively with all convention centers across the country, trying to establish baseline metrics on what safety could look like. So our clients and our attendees feel like there's some level of consistency on what they can expect across the country. Certainly our health authorities do vary across the country, so there is some timing difference on when actions could or will take place. And there may be slight variations depending on which provincial governments are asking for. That's been incredibly successful and a great collaboration. From a provincial standpoint, the 4 primary convention venues in the province of Alberta did come together to author the provincial document on opening. And thankfully, just last Thursday, we were given the green light to start operating our trade and exhibition shows. We do have permission provincially right now to run seated meetings up to 100 people and non-seated events up to 50 people. So those can go forward right now. The big move on trade and exhibitions is a substantial move. It does not have a capacity limit on it. It just has the physical distancing parameters on it. This was a very strategic move to try and push to get these implemented right away so that we had planning windows. Now that we have permission, it doesn't mean that an exhibition moves in tomorrow. They need to sell their space to their exhibitors and so forth and so on. Certainly not unlike what Sabrina would have talked about in Miami. And Sabrina, thank you for giving all the details on GBEC, so I don't need to. But the Global Biorisk Advisory Council is something that 3 of the 4 venues are already listed as going after their accreditation in Alberta, and I think there's 5 in all of Canada. So it is a significant protocol and a change in operating that you will see through our venue that is over and above what the government regulations are. And it is to bring some level of certainty to both attendees and to clients that we are doing the utmost to protect the safety of everyone in our building, including our employees first, and our guests and our clients. So these are big moves, and I'm sure we'll get to big expenses attached to each one of these big moves later in the Zoom today. But we continue to look forward and are doing everything that we can to get the business back open, to get people back to work, and to try and keep our industry afloat.
That's awesome. Thanks for that, Greg. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of collaboration here across Canada and specifically in Alberta to get the same sort of the same language and the same parameters around reopening. I think it's been really important. So maybe I'll ask Sabrina, is there collaboration within your state or within the United States with convention centers specifically working together to create standardized policies? Maybe tell me a little bit about what you've been through. Oh, you need to unmute Sabrina, Alex. Not sure why it's doing that. Give us 2 seconds here. There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So as part of our research and recovery plan development, we worked hard to reach out and partner with national organizations. There is a group called Go Live Together. There's other campaigns that have been put together by Freeman. Spectra Venue Management, we manage buildings worldwide, so we have the ability to leverage within our own family and provide feedback, best practices, crystal balls, experience-driven kind of commentary back to each other to support the development of our plans. There is a lot of synergy that has to happen between clients, vendors, the venue, and local authorities. In Miami, we have to look to our City of Miami Beach officials who are informed and work in tandem with our Miami-Dade County officials, and they may or may not be subject to the same kinds of obligations as state officials are putting out, right? So here in the US, it gives us a little bit more flexibility with how we are going to be executing and putting things in place. In general, everyone here has one commitment: personal responsibility to protect our collective health. And we are all making the best choices based on the data that's provided to create protocols, procedures, event plans, systems that are going to work for all the stakeholders, but keeping that paramount, that we can't be forward-looking and only be like, well, this is what I'm doing. Well, no, we have to collaborate and work together from the granular level of how many hand sanitizers are we going to put on the show floor to the larger big picture level. What does it mean to be an economic driver during a global pandemic? And all of these kinds of questions and discussions are informed by sister facilities, our government partners, and our vendors and GSCs and clients that are going to be working within the building.
That's great. Thanks, Sabrina. Khalid, maybe the same question from your area. Tell me a little bit about any sort of collaborations that you've had on your reopening procedures, protocols, working with the local government there. What's the experience been like?
Yeah, I mean, here in the city, we have a crisis committee. So the city has formed crisis committee, and being in an exhibition center, we were closely working with them since we have transferred some of our halls into a field hospital. So we were in a very close contact with them, and we've understood exactly what they were looking for. In terms of guidelines, also when we put the shows, yes, we work very closely with the crisis committee in Dubai, and we managed to get the approval with the. I mean, as every floor plan needs to be checked by them. Yes, we agree, which is taking a little bit time, but it's fine, you know, just to make sure. I mean, one day before the event, they came just to make sure the setup is as per the floor plan that was submitted, which is mainly to ensure social distancing, single entry and single. Entry and exit, they don't collide with each other. It's at the two different sides of the venue. So we do have a close uh, collaboration with them, and from a visitor perspective, just as a thumb rule, you know, they've established one visitor for every 4 square meters. So if we have a 4,000 square meter hall, we can get maximum 1,000 visitor, and the social distancing here is 2 meters. So 2 meter is mandatory between a visitor and a visitor. And these are the things which they come and they check. And their hotline is open for us, being a trade hub and an exhibition center. Whenever we have any query, we have a direct contact. So. And honestly saying, I mean, this is the beauty of the city, because all the agencies, they work very closely with each other. I mean, the city is not very big. It's decent in terms of size, and the process of decision making is very fast. Yeah? So in a couple of phone calls, we've managed to get approvals. We've managed to get advice.
That sounds like a dream. Awesome. Okay. So a question that's come up on a lot of our webinars is who bears the overall responsibility for the health and safety management once we get back to work? So a lot of our webinars, we're talking to planners and supplier partners. And from a venue's perspective, as we start to go back to work, where do you see that relationship playing between the planner and the venue? Who ultimately, in your view, is responsible for the approach and for the execution of the health and safety plan? And I think maybe in that as well, I'd love for the attendees today to take away from this what they can do to support that as well, and what they should be coming to the table prepared with. I'll maybe let you guys, if anybody wants to take a crack at that first.
I think my answer is easy, Dustin. So being a government-owned venue, so we are owned by the government. We bear all these expenses. We do understand now that the organizer also will need to maintain social distancing when he sells the space. Yeah, so the price per square meter indirectly will increase on him, yeah, because he can sell now to less exhibitors, and from a visitor perspective, now he will have less visitors. We are looking at putting a concert in 3 weeks' time, and one of the key factors that the concert promoter is having is the number of tickets that he can sell in his concert. So we were very flexible with them. We have a lot of city mandate besides our existing commercial mandate of being a venue. Yeah, so it makes it easy when we negotiate, and it makes it much easier when we deal with them. So just to put it in a very short note, yes, all 90% of the expense which is related to hygiene, disinfection, and XYZ, we are absorbing. I think
Dustin, you're muted.
Sorry, I had a dog barking in the background there. One of the joys of this new working world I'm in. Okay, thanks for that, Khalid. That makes sense. While we're talking about money, we might as well go around the table and talk about money. So Sabrina, why don't we talk a little bit about the additional expenses that a planner could see within your venue as far as reopening, and how's that going to look?
You know, to kind of touch and tie both points together, we are all risk managers now, all of us. The venue, the GSC, client, the event producer, the service provider, the catering guy, the waiter, the GM, we are all risk managers. And we have to really embrace shared responsibility and make a commitment that we are working together. I do think that the venue should operate as connective tissue. It's sort of the nexus or the hub, and all the spokes are the providers, the client, the government, and local officials. So there is a commitment from the venue side where the GBAC accreditation is not it's not pennies. So that's a very important investment for us from a venue perspective. Additional cleaning supplies, additional staffing to help monitor social distancing. There's going to be a component of an overall that will be borne by the venue. But each event that comes into the convention center is different. And so our event plans are scalable, customizable, dynamic. We have to work together to be able to figure out how is a social event kind of gala going to work versus an exhibition trade show floor, taking into account attendee demographics, and budgets are going to be an important part of that conversation. But I think that the driving force behind it is the collaborative spirit. Yes, you know, I think that it's not a surprise for service providers, vendors, venues, clients, event planners to think, gee, we got to get the red pencil out and start to relook at budgets. The collaborative spirit, the idea that everyone at the table is really here so that we can get people back to work. We're not trying to make bazillions of dollars at the moment. So that's me and you and our counterparts. And I feel like there is a commitment from the events industry to do what it needs to do to be able to make this event work. So yes, I expect changes in budgets, but I expect a collaborative spirit where we can all work together with transparency and frequent dialogue to be able to create the most safe environment for all the participants, guests, attendees, vendors and service providers, staff and employees. At the end of the day, collecting our protective health is going to be paramount.
There we go. Sorry, we've turned on every feature on Zoom possible today. Sabrina, that's really awesome. I couldn't agree with you more about the collaborative approach, and I think that that your statement about we're all now risk managers together couldn't be more true. Greg, anything to add to this conversation about the roles and responsibilities of those coming into your venues? And we might as well talk about kind of any of the expenses that you see hitting the bill that may not have been there before.
Yeah, so let's start with roles and responsibilities, and collaborative is absolutely the number one word. And from vendors right through to the client, I think when we look at the health and safety plan of every event coming in, it's going to be an all hands on deck. When it comes to accountability, at least for us here, our health authorities hold us accountable for what's happening in our venues. That's no different than our liquor license or our fire occupancy. And so we have a due diligence responsibility to make sure that the safety plans that are coming into our venue are up to what we expect them to be, no different than what GBAC will expect from us as well. So I would say that, you know, the buck stops with us as far as safety goes from a venue perspective, but we can only get there in a collaborative relationship with our clients and our suppliers on making sure that we're all on the same page for what expectations are. If we didn't do it collaboratively, the expenses would be astronomical for the amount of people that we would have to, as a venue, put out there to maintain. So it's going to have to be done collaboratively. When we move on to expenses, and it's an interesting question that doesn't really have an easy answer or an immediate answer. Certainly Sabrina would have touched on the expenses that we're paying for programs like GBAC, which are no small pennies, trust me. Some of the new product that we have to bring in to clean our venues to keep everyone safe has an increased expense on it. Certainly our revenues in other areas are going to go down because we will have less people in our venues and less availability to do all types of events at all times. But what I can say about pricing is pricing is always driven by the golden age rule of supply and demand. So I would say in the short term, the number one motivation, at least for us and for a number of venues, is just to get the industry back. So do we think that you'll see immediate impact on what that is? I think we're still trying to understand what our costs are going to be. Long term, looking at the health of convention centers, probably in North America, for sure in Canada, most of our venues are losing money or breaking even at best prior to COVID. So eventually those costs are going to have a negative impact on our venues. What that looks like, I don't know. I think we'll be able to adapt into what our standard operating is from an expense procedure and not pass that on necessarily to our customer. Hopefully we found efficiencies, and COVID has certainly allowed us to look at how we operate as venues in a number of different ways to find efficiencies, which would offset the increased expenses that we would have talked about. I think where the increased expenses come may not be direct from venue to client, but when we talk about a collaborative process of making sure that social distancing is being maintained, that technology is in place for registration, technology is in place for attendee tracking in case there is an incident, and probably signage, queuing, stanchions, all those wonderful things that everyone sees all over their invoice at the end of an event. I would imagine that you'll end up seeing that flow through directly to your invoice at some point, and it may not be immediate. And I'm guessing, I'm not saying that that's a fact. But when it's directly event related costs and not general venue related costs, I think that that's where we'll see the cost transfer onto the client. Unfortunately, I'm just trying to be a realist in all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense to me. I think you also touched on a few items in the supply chain that are going to need to be built up in order for us to reopen. So you were talking about signage and stanchions and different sorts of wayfinding. ILEA has, you know, a great supplier partner base. So is there anything else outside of the obvious that our supplier partners should be thinking about that we're going to need more of once we go back to work? I think there's some obvious crowd control stuff, but have you guys put any thought to things that you're going to need to start seeing in your facilities on a regular basis that we could not have enough of to start doing large scale events?
Yeah, maybe if I just jump in there. And again, we're still in such an early level of exploration because we haven't launched into these events. I do think that what we're going to see is maybe a move away from as many soft goods. There may not be as much carpet in venues from a cleaning process as there maybe once was. Temporary carpet. Pipe and drape might be something that needs to now look a little bit more hard-walled for easier cleaning, but I don't know that for a fact. When we talk about exhibitions, hardwall creates a better separation that allows booths to be against each other versus a very thin banjo drape that maybe does not protect anybody from anything. So that would be a guess in that way. I would encourage everyone to look at supply chain in general, especially in the short term, when with border closures and difficulty on getting product anywhere, and just the supply chain being compressed right down to what your food and beverage offerings are going to be, or what the expense on food is, and that's just based on supply. Menu selection is probably in the short term or for the next year going to be something that's going to be very, very difficult. And we all want to go regional anyways, but seasonality is probably going to become far more prevalent on menus. And then you look at things like the sanitizing gels. In March, we would have seen them grow in price by about 400% and 3-month wait lists to try and get it. And so we would all prefer to have, for instance, the automated dispensers of that gel, but the automated dispensers were also sold out. So supply chain becomes something, at least in the short term, is an issue and a concern for us as venue operators.
Mm-hmm. Sabrina, anything to add to the supply chain?
No, I think that the piece that I was thinking about is a digital infrastructure, an IT network and backbone that can be really dynamic and supportive of high levels of information trade, only because there's going to be, as we ease off on touch points and face-to-face interactions, even during a mass gathering and live event, we will need to be, in exchange, we have to honor the consistency that's going to need to be in place through deploying a really robust IT infrastructure. At the center, the building was designed following its $200+ million renovation to function as an emergency management hub during hurricanes. So the IT infrastructure was key to the center, and again, being extraordinarily robust for a building. But I think that needs to become more standardized in general throughout our industry, because there's going to be a reliance on Wi-Fi over hardline to be able to do data transfers and continue to reduce touch points and really close interactions that when you compare to the traditional way that we used to do business.
That's great. So another thing that's come up quite a bit through our webinars and also through different conversations throughout the industry is sustainability practices kind of getting pushed to the wayside through all of this, and a lot of disposables, a lot of stuff hitting the garbage bin that we normally would have pushed for some more sustainable products. I'm just wondering how everybody is thinking about that, and is that still remaining a priority? Of course, you're all going to say yes, but hopefully you can elaborate. Maybe I'll start with Khalid. How is sustainability and environmental issues in general dealt with in Dubai and at your center?
And I mean, since the pandemic hit, we could see that this became secondary. I mean, people's health is become primary. Despite, I mean, we started producing locally. I mean, as a country, you know, masks that you could wear it more than one time, so you don't dispose the masks. But yeah, I mean, it became, unfortunately, at the moment, is secondary, and health is primary.
That makes sense. Sabrina?
You know, our wonderful partners at Centerplate in Miami Beach, they've been really great with their commitment towards sustainability. So this has been somewhat disruptive to have to look at traditional ways of doing things. But they have developed like bamboo pieces, you know, more plant material based flatwares and serviceware, which continues to support the sustainability initiatives. At the center, we really leverage our infrastructure. We have the single stream recycling programs. We have these reduced water flow fixtures that are touchless. So like, oh, great, you know, it raises conservation efforts, and it also supports health and safety efforts. Originally, the building was surrounded by 6 acres of asphalt for parking lot, and they turned that into 9 acres of park green space, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so we're leveraging our infrastructure to continue to support those types of sustainability initiatives that are really important, especially here in Miami Beach. But you have to be realistic about the landscape, and we can leverage certain types of resources like the bamboo serviceware, but that's also going to impact budgets and budget development processes. This is where we get into the collaborative nature of the event planning process, where the venue may have sustainability initiatives and requirements. The city of Miami Beach has a plastic-free campaign, which in general may need to be sort of reconsidered depending on the specific event, in tandem with our Centerplate service providers, in tandem with the event planners and organizers and producers, to see what can we financially support, and at the same time still have our lofty ideals and strive towards these goals. So it speaks to the customization that's needed for all the different types of events, especially for a venue like ours that does broad swath of different types of events.
Yeah, you spoke about I'm assuming that's your food and beverage partner?
Yes.
Yeah, so So they're working with you to find the best solutions, and that's great. Greg, at the BMO Center, what's the thoughts around sustainability and any impacts you think this is going to have?
Yeah, interesting. It's in the short term, we too are looking at plant-based product. We still want to be sustainable. Certainly, every indication that we have right now is specifically from a food and beverage aspect. Everything has to be in sealed, single-use containers. That's a short term. We'll get back to a normal way of behaving at some point. But again, we get supply chain, and the challenge that we're having on plant-based product right now is the supply chain. It's not necessarily produced here in Canada. And so we have some issues there when we get into bamboo and things like that. So there's going to be a balance. Certainly, sustainability is going to take a hit in the short term. The waste is going to be higher. We're in a unique position here that we're currently in the middle of a redevelopment and creating the second largest convention center in Canada, first outside of Toronto. From a design aspect, it's been very interesting to try and change midstream. And again, maybe to echo Sabrina's comments or Khalid's comments, is that, you know, sustainability probably would have been at the forefront of a lot of what we were trying to do right there with the overall experience. And since March now, of course, the focus is on what is the bio risk, or what is the health and safety aspects of this building. And things are going to change dramatically in our industry. When we talk about increased waste coming into the venue, you know, we're designing in our new building a completely separate room for all goods to be unpacked, cleaned, and sanitized before they hit any other part of the building, specifically into our kitchen. So things are going to have to be unpacked and repacked to move throughout the building, just to try and guarantee that there's a cleanliness. So the aspects that we're trying to tackle there is how do we do that with not increasing waste? So it is certainly a challenging time. Sustainability has been at the forefront of so much of what we have done for so long in our industry, and we were just hitting our stride on being much better. But I'll go back to my comment on probably less carpet, disposable carpet. That's probably a significant sustainability step that the industry can make. It's just questioning how do we still create the experience for attendees and reduce carpet use and disposable products in that way as well.
So Greg, did I hear you correctly that you know, you're at the beginning of a huge development? Have you taken a step back and started to relook at that development with the things that we've learned over the last 4 months and the design of that new space?
Yeah, so we've certainly spent some time on our interiors. We know that not every client comes in and buys the entire building. So we've certainly looked at access and egress points, and whether or not we can create separation between multiple groups. I mean, there's one thing to physical distance within a group that you have some level of trust, and then there's a different level of trust with a group that you have no relationship to. Right. And the biggest concern that we previously had was who was stealing the wrong cookies off the wrong buffet. And that level of uncertainty has certainly gotten a lot higher with the situation that we're going through now. So we've spent quite a bit of time on being able to provide different avenues to different amounts of our space. We're certainly, as we look at finishes on this design, looking at the touch points, the materiality of what we're doing. Is it easy to disinfect, or does it have self-disinfecting properties to it? Interesting, because most of our venues have an abundance of doors for fire reasons. But for the most part, we don't have an abundance of automated doors. But now, do people actually want to be pulling or pushing on a handle? Bathroom design, if you were to look at most bathroom designs, doors open in, that will no longer happen, I don't think, in design on any mass gathering buildings, because people don't want to wash their hands and then touch a handle. So it's something on doors will be going out, but that opens into a hallway, which becomes a fire issue. So now we're getting into pocket doors or no doors. So those are all things that we've taken into consideration. From an F&B perspective, we have certainly looked at hospital grade activation within our kitchen. So product is coming in one end, out the other end, and trying to behave a little bit more like a hospital who's living on a much higher level of hygiene than anything else. So it has drastically impacted the way that we are thinking about design.
That's awesome. That's really great to hear. I think everybody on the webinar is thinking of that time they stole a cookie off somebody else's buffet. You all know who you are. That's great. We're going to get to some of the questions in the Q&A box. I've got one more question for everybody, and then we'll get to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please use the Q&A. Don't put your questions in the chat because I'm not reading those. So this one's really simple. What type of events do you see coming back first? And what types of events do you see coming back last? I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe I'll start with Sabrina. What do you see in your crystal ball that we all have that's been working so well for us? What do you see coming back first, and what do you see being the biggest challenge to bring back?
So, you know, I'm looking at my local community and sort of the things that really drive my community. I fully expect personal events, social events, weddings, quinceañeras. That's what I think comes back first in my community. My people live for social events, so I think I can't really see larger scale meetings coming back before social events. That's really what's going to come out first. And then last is very compelling, because I think what you ask me today will be a different opinion than what you'll get from me next week. Right now, I think that large scale indoor arena concert types of things, where you have touring product and 20,000 screaming, dancing fans, I think that that's going to be really challenging for that to come back. But that, you know, again, you can ask me in a couple of days and I'll probably have a guess for you. I feel pretty confidently though that social events, weddings, personal parties, quinceañeras, that those are come back first.
Awesome. Khalid, same question. What's coming back first? You've already done a 1,000-person event, which I'm sure everybody here is in awe of and we're very jealous of, but tell us a bit about what you expect to come back first and where you think the challenges lay for other events.
I think here the situation is totally, I think opposite, because the conference and trade shows started earlier. It started much earlier than anyone expected, which I think because of its economical impact, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that they've evaluated the economical impact against also the risk of people, getting together. And surprisingly, also, we will be having concerts before weddings. Yeah. And weddings at the moment, as we speak, it's out of the radar. Yeah? So, the reality, we host 300 weddings in our venue. And at the moment, we could not tell anyone when the weddings will start. We don't have a direction. They've told us soon we will know about it. So wedding comes last, and trade shows comes at the beginning. We have already done one.
That's great. Khalid, what is it about the weddings that you think are, what's holding back from producing weddings now?
I think the importance of that type of events. Yeah, I think weddings for the economy and for people is not as important as trade shows and conferences. And I am sure this is the main reason why it is till at the moment we don't have any answer on when we can start host wedding.
Wow, tough love in Dubai. Geesh, wow. All right, Greg, I've read the provincial report that you did, so I think I already know the answer to this. But why don't you share what's coming back first and where you think our biggest challenges are coming up?
Yeah, certainly. I think from our perspective, it all resonates with what is the easiest to maintain physical distancing. We have the ability to do small meetings right now. We could do small social, so we could do smaller weddings. But if you look at it from a protocol perspective, we layer on all our different types of events. There are those types of events that are transactional, that behave no different than a shopping mall or a grocery store, and then there's those types of events that force people into the physical bubble of each other. So social events for us are probably going to be a little bit later, especially larger ones, because they are about mingling, they are about being close, and they are about networking, which breaks that physical distancing parameter. Not that I don't want them back, boy, would I love to have them back. But in my conversations with government here, it's something they really have a hard time wrapping their head around. So it's probably the third after small meetings and exhibitions and consumer trade shows, if you will. Probably last, if I go to the very last thing to come back, it will be concerts, major sporting events, things like that. And then in the middle there is going to be larger conferences and conventions, specifically those that are not regional in nature, that have people traveling on airplanes across borders or even across the country, which carries the highest risk. And from a health authority perspective, they talk about super spreaders. And so from a risk perspective, they're looking at if something was to happen in an event, where do those delegates go back to that they could then spread it themselves? So regional events by nature, if I was to do it geographical, are going to be first to return, then national events before international. So international events by far are going to be the longest to come back. And we're probably talking years before we see true international events return.
I unfortunately agree with you there. All right, let's get to a couple questions. Again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A box. Yeah, let's start with this one. This is an interesting one that we may have different answers to. With the government dictating event capacities, in your area, do you include staffing in the government's numbers, or is the staffing above? So if we're 50 people, do the staff get included in that, or if they're above? And yeah, just your thoughts on that and how we can maybe accommodate less staff if that's the case. Sabrina?
Right now, where we are in our phased process, staffing would be included in that. And that's like as of today, right? But what our goal is and what we're working towards is, again, speaking to dynamic event plans. And we're trying to move the conversation away from capacities based on numbers like 300 flat, and more towards conversations based on square footage. Because overall, the Miami Beach Convention Center is 1.4 million square feet of space. It will lend itself better to a square footage type of discussion than it would to just giving us a flat capacity. In particular, when you're thinking about doing multiple events at the same time in different quadrants of the building, which is something that we're exploring because the venue itself lends itself to that. But we have to work hand in hand with our city and county partners to help the educational process so that they understand the differences between a flat capacity versus a dynamic square footage and what that will look like. And then the sort of review and approval process that is embedded in proposing those plans and getting the tires on the ground and getting into action. So it's, in my community, it will be really nuanced. And, you know, from where we are right now, that's not something that we're doing, but the dialogue that's happening is, let's talk about the available square footage and how we can achieve the event, and then start to think about layering in top of that, well, that's 100 guests and 50 staff. Because, you know, we can talk and educate our decision makers and stakeholders that there's still separation regardless of the number of people on the floor.
Great. Greg, same question. I see you smiling at this question, so let's do it.
And I'm completely aware of the fact there's a couple of words in my top right hand corner saying recording, which makes me want to play with my answer a little bit here. I think from, you know, the way the spirit of the rules that are being published, at least here in Alberta, is that health authorities would look at it as overall volume of people, regardless whether they're staff, client, or attendee. Truth is that an individual health inspector can't walk into most events and be able to tell you what the capacity is. They're going to be looking at the physical distancing. If they were to question, and we were to look at our floor plan and to devise a floor plan that said, you know, 40,000 square feet, we could have 1,200 people in it at any given time, and we were doing attendance counting at entrances and exits, we would only be counting attendees. Mm-hmm. So it's not an easy answer. To echo Sabrina's comments, certainly in the early going of opening for all governments here, they started dealing with hard numbers. And again, my conversations, no different than what Sabrina would have mentioned, was 100 people in 1,000 square feet is very different than 100 people in 5,000 square feet from a safety perspective. And So our government has now preferred not to use hard numbers where they can. And they just want to live by the 2-meter social distancing platform, or 6 feet. And that makes it a lot easier for us. We still need to vet our floor plans specifically to show that we're doing our due diligence. There's a shared responsibility on behalf of everybody, attendees included, to make sure that that's there. But I think that if I was to just answer your question by the letter of the law, health authorities would not be savvy enough to try and separate clients or employees from general attendees.
Very politically responded to. Thank you. We're just about out of time here, but I thought we could wrap up with hopefully a positive question. With COVID hitting our industry so hard, what are some positives that have come out of this, and what are some changes that you see that will be here forever, that came from this, that it will be beneficial for us in the future? Khalid, anything positive that you feel has come out of this that we're going to be grateful for many, many years down the road?
Yeah, I think the cohesiveness of the industry, yeah, being between an organizer and an entertainment event promoter. I mean, this is what had happened here. Actually, we all get together more. I mean, even ILEA, if I take ILEA as an example for an association, the members number have increased. Yeah, I mean, they have increased a lot. I don't have today the actual figure of the member after the pandemic. It's much more, at least it's double the number of members before the pandemic. So it brings everyone together. We had even a DJ calling and saying, I want to be part of the association, and I think ILEA is the right association for me to be in. So here we got together, and I think this is positive. And I think this also will make our industry more sustainable. And I am sure it triggered at the right time, where a lot of people are thinking how we can make the events industry much more sustainable, and and it can withstand this type of situation, not today, in the future. Yeah, because the worst thing could happen is that people will think that, oh, it's a too risky industry and I want to change career. Yeah, and this will be really bad. Yeah? And this is something that we don't want it to happen in our industry. So the cohesiveness, I think, is among ourselves in the industry, from florist in a wedding, to an organizer of a trade show, to a DJ who plays music at night, getting all together and understanding how big is the industry. I think this is the biggest thing I have seen so far during this pandemic.
That's great. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that we, in a lot of cases, have really come together and sat down and had to figure this out together in a way that hasn't happened in the past. Sabrina, what's the silver lining? What's the thing that we're all going to be so proud of when this is over, and something that will take us into the next generation of events?
I do love the spirit of Khalid's comment on collaboration. I think that is something that we may even be taking a little bit for granted because we're experiencing this physical isolation. But there have been tools put out there to support us to continue to collaborate and work together to a shared common goal, right? To get back to work and to make sure that we protect each other. But, in general, I think for the convention center, we're an economic driver within our community. So it was important that we come up with new initiatives that are still supportive of familiar strategies, right? So it was definitely some of these crisis breeds ingenuity types of feelings. And, we had our great director of sales, in tandem with the rest of the team, developed a meetings package to help support the local hotel partners. If there's a chance they can save a room block because we are now taking different styles of events. So the crisis breeding ingenuity, and I'm big on long-term solutions for short-term crisis, right? And it's very easy to get caught up in this sense of fear and that we're stuck in this long dark corridor. And on the other side of this, we will be better people who have healthier venues, that's for sure, much more healthier work environments. And this commitment to each other, I really love how that can lend itself to our community and our industry specifically. So it's a little bit of a couple things. The crisis breeding ingenuity, long-term solutions, short-term crisis. And I'm going to embrace Khalid's comments on collaboration.
That's great, Sabrina. I agree with you on all those points. Greg, final thought. What's the silver lining in all of this? What are we going to be proud of? What's going to take us into the next 100 years of events before we got to deal with this crap again?
Yeah, maybe I'll draw on three things. One is ability to change, creativity, and critical thinking. Ability to change, because all of us as venues have things that we desire or want to do to bring better customer experience, to bring better things to the market. However, changing the wheels on the bus as it's moving is an incredibly difficult thing to do. So having this time to not be in regular business has allowed us to attack some of those projects that we wanted to attack before, or further develop them, and they should all be to the benefit of our clients and our attendees. Creativity, and that's all of us just thinking about how events will be different, can be different, and still be experiential. And not to blame the fact that events were getting stale, but they started feeling a little bit like wash, rinse, and repeat with a little bit of different lipstick on it. And so I think everyone's looking at just how events are going to be delivered, short-term, long-term, and it's a little bit of reignition into our industry. And then critical thinking, and the reason I say critical thinking, and there's a lot of people on this call that specifically on the ILEA side are critical thinkers. But when you go through a time like this, you really understand from a staffing perspective who your critical thinkers are that can deal with problems, that can adjust and be nimble, which are all buzzwords these days. And you see those that are just robotic and programmed to do the things the way they've always been done. And the challenge that I have coming out of this is if we think that we're going to behave the way that we did in February, we're epically going to fail. The industry's just not going to be at that level for some time. So it's changed our recruiting, I think, on looking for critical thinkers versus just industry experience. And that's exciting because that's what breeds ingenuity. So those are the things that I'm really excited about coming out of this.
That's great. I took everybody a couple minutes over. I do apologize for that. A big thank you to Sabrina, Khalid, and Greg. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you're all extremely busy people, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that joined us today. What day is it today? It's Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. Thank you to Alex from our headquarter partners for taking care of us today. We apologize for the couple little glitches we had along the way there. Big thanks to Giants Enterprises for sponsoring this webinar and all of our webinars through our recovery series. Alex, do I have to do anything else, or is that it?
That is it. Thank you everyone for joining.
Awesome. Thank you everybody for joining. Have a great day. Greg, Sabrina, Khalid, thank you again. There's no green room for us to go back to, so this is the end.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.